Monday and a great start to your new week. I don't know if you saw or not, but I put a little video up at the end of last week. I had a new little grandson born. His name is Teddy. He's so cute. In my most recent videos, I had shown you guys how to make these components. I actually did it in a 3-part series because I was also writing some blog posts about it. And we've got the 2 components already created. Last week I went ahead and created a pattern for the pendant portion, the larger portion of this necklace idea I'm working on. And once again, I wanted to reiterate that the whole concept for this came about to try to make a design for a necklace using the Pantone color of the year, which is Living Coral. So here's the pendant, and the pattern is available at the shop on the alluringboutique.com. Here's what the back looks like. And this is one of my brick stitch on a double frame techniques. I really like the way this came out. It's really pretty. And then last night I put a post up talking about the other components that are going to be used in my overall necklace design, so in case you're following along. But I should have the post written up for brick stitch on a bead using these beautiful dark gray Swarovski pearls here. That should be available in a couple of days on my blog, or it probably might be available by the time I get this video done. And then today I'm going to show you guys how to do a simple peyote bezel for one of those beautiful shell coin beads that I've used as the focal on these components in the pendant. And let's go ahead and check really quick and give you guys the exact measurement here with this bead. I've got it written down in the pattern and everywhere else, but I keep forgetting, so we will look at it this way. And if I put it right there on the 20 and take a look, it's a 14 millimeter coin shell bead, and they're dyed this beautiful corally orange mother of pearl looking color. And I got mine on a strand from Fire Mountain Gems. If I get time, I will try to throw a link up to some of these things, but just know that I got these on Fire Mountain Gems. The hoop components that I've been using in the series all came in a single packet. They're all gunmetal colored, and you can get the packet at Joann's. And sometimes you can find them at Michael's, but I usually find the best ones at Joann's. And you can shop online and get those there too. It comes with a whole beautiful assortment of things. And I want to show you guys how to do this, how we can create a peyote bezel for one of those flat coin beads, such as this. So what I did to get started is I used one of my frosted gray Toho beads here as a stop bead. And then I count that as 1, and I want an even number of beads, to go around the outside edge of this particular shell bead. But because I've already made one, I also already know that 30 is the magic number. So I count out 30, and as you can see, they fit nicely around that bead. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that out of my way. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take that stop bead off and then simply just thread it back on. I just use it as a stop bead when I'm counting because earlier today I dropped 30 of these in the floor. So now once I have those 30 beads on, and I'll tell you the materials as we go along, but it's just some 11-0 Tohos, some 11-0 Miyuki Delicos, and some 15-0 Tohos in the aluminum permanent finish. So we're just going to pass right back through all of these beads again. And if you can't get it all in one pass, that's perfectly understandable because that's a lot of beads. I'm going to hold the tail as I pull this through so I don't pull all of my beads right back off the tail thread. And then as I get it pulled around in my circle, I can shorten the tail thread a little bit. I only need a couple of inches here. I will be using that to tie my thread off at the very end. So I need to finish passing through the rest of these 30 beads until my 2 threads meet up. And then I can just go ahead and make myself 2 little overhand knots. But when you're tying your knots right here, don't pull super tight. Just get the knot cinched up into the place between the first bead and the last bead without pulling extremely tight. Let's get it right in there, just like that. Because if you pull too tight, you're going to find that your queen bead is no longer going to fit in there. And this happened to me earlier, so all I did was I just took my bead and I mashed around a little bit on it and just stretched it back out until it fit nicely. And it will fit. Trust me, because I've already done one. Now, before we start our peyote, you want to take your needle and move a few beads ahead away from that knot. And just pull the thread through. In the first pass we make, just like in any other peyote, this is more considered tubular peyote. All the beads we pick up in the initial pickup, as soon as we make this next round, these are going to count as rows 1 and 2. When we start adding beads here, that'll be row 3. You can use your finger. You can use a dowel. I used this dowel earlier just to get started because it makes it a little bit easier to control. Excuse me, what's happening with the beads. So I'm just going to slide it on this little dowel. But if you don't have anything that fits in there, you can try markers, pins, anything that's round and close to the size of your circle should work. And you can also use your finger. But now we're just going to do regular peyote. So we are exiting from this bead. We're going to pick up an 11-0 frosted gray toho. We're going to skip one bead and go through the next. Just like that. And pull it into position. And as you pull it in, you'll notice how it sits beside the bead we skipped over. Just like that. And so now we're just going to repeat that all the way around the beadwork. We're going to pick up one, skip one, and go through the next bead. And pull. A couple of things to look out for is you want to make sure that your bead doesn't get hung up on the dowel or that it doesn't get hung up on one of your previous beads. So I'm picking up another one, skipping one, and going through the next. And I'm not the most graceful at this stitch, but I can get it done. Just takes me a little time. And I'm going to continue on until I've worked myself all the way around this beadwork. I'll show you one more, and then I'll meet you back as soon as I'm ready to add my last bead. So I'm going to pick up one. I am exiting from this bead. I'm going to skip that bead and go through this bead. And if you have a hard time ever following some of these simpler things that I show you, there are some great teachers here on YouTube that can help you if I am confusing you. Some of my favorites are, of course, Jill Wiseman. I like the Bronze Pony, and I like Kelly Dale. I also like Jana on Beading for Perfectionists. Most of the stuff I learned off those girls, so they are really good. So anyhow, I'm going to keep working, and as soon as I get ready to add my 15th bead, I'll come back and I'll show you guys how to step up. So I've worked my way around, guys, and I am exiting from this bead right here. I have to put on this last bead, so I'm exiting here. I'm going to skip that bead and come through the bead in front of it, right there. And then at the same time, I'm going to go through, I want to be working next on this side. So when I pass through that bead, excuse me, because I'm left-handed, it's a little awkward for me. So when I pass through that bead, I'm also going to pass through that next bead on the diagonal to the right, this way. And I'm going to pull that through. So basically all I've really done there is I have added my bead and stepped into position at the same time. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this off of here. And I'm going to use my finger as a replacement. Because this next round, I'm going to start, because our bead is so flat and thin, we don't need a lot of rows to create this little bezel setting. So the next round, I'm going to go ahead and step down a little bit by using these little black 11-0 jet opaque delicas. Sorry, I dropped my beadwork. Okay, so now I'm exiting this bead here. I've got the one on the opposite side that we added in the last round, and here's the one sitting right beside it. I'm going to pick up my black bead, and I'm going to go through that next one sticking out right there. We're still skipping one. We're skipping the one that became on the bead of row 2. So when we look at this beadwork, this bead here is row 1. The bead sitting by itself here is row 2. And then the next bead is row 3, right here to the other edge. So now we're working on row 4, and we're using these little black delicas. And we are just going to come through only the poking out beads here on row 1. And I'm not really forcing this over into a huge tube. I'm just kind of making it like a little bit like a tube, like this. So basically, when you do this, these peyote bezels this way, it is the same thing as tubular peyote. You're just working in a smaller scale. You're not making a big long tube. You're just working both sides to create a little seat for a stone or a bead. So I'm going to go ahead and keep adding these little black delicas all the way around, so they sit in between each one of my sticking out row 1 frosted gray beads. And then when I get ready to add the last one, I'll come back and show you what to do next. So I worked myself around, and I'm getting ready to add that last little black bead. And my tail thread, my working thread is exiting from this, excuse me, let's see if I can get that to focus, from this bead here. I picked up my little black bead, and I'm passing through the next sticking out frosted gray bead, plus I'm going to step up into that very first black delica I added in this round. And this is all as I'm adding that last bead. I'm going to pull that around and get that little bead to pop into position right there. So that this is what our beadwork looks like. And you can see I've still got that little tiny dome shape going on to this beadwork. Because in a few minutes, after we do one more round, we're going to go ahead and set this little bead into the cup. And we're going to work on the front side. But before we do, we're going to do one more round here on the bottom. So now we're stepped up into the very first delica right here. Now we're going to use our 15-0. You can use bright silver. These just happen to be the permanent finish aluminum 15-0s by Toho. So I'm picking up one of those, and I'm going to pass through the next sticking up delica from the previous round. When I pull it into position, that little bead pops right in between those two delicas. So we're just going to do this until we've come all the way around the beadwork. We should have 15 each time. Each row we've done since we picked up the 30 has consisted of adding 15 beads. So just keep picking up one of your 15-0s and come through your next delica. Show you one more. Pick up the 15-0. We're coming out of this previous delica here. We're going through the very next one. As I work, I'm just going to use the tip of my finger to keep, my beadwork in that nice little domed cup shape. All right, so let me add the rest of these 15-0s, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how we're going to set our little queen bead in the middle. So once you've worked yourself back around the beadwork, and you've got your last little 15-0 here ready to be put on, I'm exiting from that delica. I'm going to come over to this delica, and then I'm also going to pass up into that silver bead. So let me finagle my work around. Just like that. So I'm coming up through the next delica, just like I normally would, to add the bead, and stepping up into the very first 15-0. And pull it into position. So that this is what you should have now. We're in this nice little cup shape. And when we set our little queen bead in there, we can flip it over and see that the queen bead cannot come out the back. And that's what the goal is. So now we're exiting from this silver bead. I like to go ahead and make one more stitch by going through the next delica and the next silver bead also, just to make sure that my entire inner circle is completely closed. Now we need to get from this silver bead to this outer frosted gray bead here. So to do that, we're going to stitch across the beadwork on the diagonal. So I'm exiting from this silver bead. So I'm going to come down through that black bead, that gray bead, which is part of row 1, the gray bead on row 2, which is here, and then the gray bead on row 3. So let me dig my needle in. I'm going to go into my black delica and then the frosted gray bead there on row 1. We'll do that part first. Let's go ahead and pull that through. So now my thread is exiting from this gray bead. I need to go to the bead in front of it that sits on row 2, which is kind of like in the middle. And then we're going to go through that gray bead here on row 3, poking out here on the other side of the beadwork. We're going to pull it through. So now we're on the opposite side of our little peyote tube / bezel. And we're ready to close these gray beads around the edge of our coin bead, like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these delica beads again. I'm going to pick up a black delica. I'm exiting from this gray bead here on row 3. I'm going to pass through the next sticking out gray bead. As I stitch this row, I'm not going to pull super tight just yet. I'm just going to get these delicas in place. So you pick up one and go through the next one sticking out. Make sure that they are in position, but don't pull super tight. You can almost kind of feel them pop in between the two frosted gray beads, just like that. So I'll get all 15 of my delicas added, and I'll come back as I add the last one, and I'll show you guys how we're going to step up and add our next set of beads. And so I've gotten all my beads added except for this last delica here on my needle. I'm coming out of this frosted gray bead right here. I need to go into the next one and then also step up into that very first delica I added in this round. So you can see that I'm going through those 2 beads right there. And I'm going to pull that into position. Then I'm going to take my little coin bead, decide which side I like the best, and put that up. And I'm just going to take it and hold it in there with my finger. It doesn't have to be really precise just yet. And I'm just going to go ahead and now I'm going to start pulling tight on that circle. And I'm going to try to situate my little bead in the center. And it's a little loose and weird, but it will fit, trust me. I've already done one. I'm just going to get it, you know, as close as I can to centered, just like this. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'm going to do another round, and I'm going to start using these little 15-ohs again. It's going to be a little wobbly, but don't worry about it because it'll straighten up towards the end. But we're going to just do the next round with the 15-ohs, just like we did in the previous on the other side. We're picking up one. We are coming out of this delica. We're going to skip over to the next delica sticking out and pull that bead in. And you can see that as you work, it's going to come up to the top of your little shell bead like that. I can get it to, there you go, like so. And we're actually going to do 2 rounds with these silver beads. So just go ahead and try to hold your bead in position with your thumb. If it flops out or hits the, hits the bricks over here, it'll be all right. Just as long as you don't pull too super tight on this round, you can get the coin bead right back in the middle. It's not that hard. So I'm going to go ahead, keep picking up the 15-ohs, coming out of one of my delicas, going into the next one, until I went all the way around this little circle and added 15 beads. And as you add your last bead, you will go up through the delica plus the very first 15-oh you added in this round, but I'll come back and show you guys that step. So I've come back around, adding all of my little silver beads. I am exiting from that black delica right there. I've got my last bead on. I'm coming through the next delica and the very first 15-0 here that I added at the beginning of this round. And I'm going to pull that into position. So now you can see that we have got our little 15-0s pretty good. And by adding one more round of 15-0s, we're going to close that beadwork up really good on this side. So let's just go ahead and do that. You can start to pull your thread slightly. I don't suggest pulling so tight that you pop that bead out right now. It's going to be really hard to keep putting it back in now that we've got this much beadwork done. So now I am coming out of this 15-0 right here. I've got a 15-0 on my needle, and I'm just going to go through that next 15-0 right there. Pull it into position gently, and keep repeating that 14 more times. Or if you had a different size bead, however many times that it takes. You could do this technique with any size of a coin bead, and that, you know, bigger than a 14 millimeter or smaller. The trick to it is going to be to make sure that your initial ring of beads contains an even number of beads. And that's the only, pretty much the only rule. If you'll notice as I'm adding these next 15-0s, I'm kind of pulling down across the center like this. Just to make sure that these beads are cupping over the top edge of that coin bead. And I'm not pulling super tight. Just tight enough to gently pull everything into position and have a nice shape. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of these beads. I'll come back and show you guys how to add the last one and what we're going to do right after that. Whoop. So when you've worked your way all the way back around and you're adding that last 15-0, you're going to come through the next 15-0 from the first round that you did, plus the one that's poked up here from this previous round that we're working on. So pull that last bead in just like we've been doing. And then you can really pull your thread across as you hold the beadwork and shape your bezel so it looks really pretty like that. There's the back, and there's the front. Now, the next part I'm going to show you guys is just optional. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm putting all of these beautiful components together in this gorgeous little necklace. And as you can see, this was done with brick stitch. That also included some super duos here. This was done with brick stitch on a frame, but all three of those. This is brick stitch on a bead, so you can see that I have all these beautiful exposed bead holes here on all of my other components that I can easily attach to. However, with my peyote bezel, I really don't have that. So I wanted to come up with a way, because I'm thinking about doing some herringbone out of these super duos here, super duos over here, and being able to connect my brick stitch components using some herringbone stitch. So how am I going to do that with these? Well, I came up with a really cute idea, and I also secured the stone right through the stone bead using the hull. And I added these little 10-0 delicas on either side of the coin bead hole to give myself a cute little way to attach these components when I get ready to put the entire necklace together. But to do that, we have to find the hole inside of this coin bead. And it is not hard. So I've taken just a regular old straight pin, and I'm just coming down in between these gray beads with poking this little thing around until I find the actual hole of this coin bead. And eventually you will find it. It's in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep working my way around until I find the actual hole that goes through my coin bead. So I found where the actual hole of my coin bead goes all the way through to the other side. And I've stuck my pin in between these frosted gray beads here. Let me pull out just a little bit. So you can see that I'm right in between some of my frosted gray on the edge. And I want to make sure I'm coming out of the same spot on the other side like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and push it all the way through. And now I'm going to take my thread, my working thread, and I'm going to reinforce my my little loop of beautiful silver seed beads here in the middle, just to tighten everything up and make sure that everything stays in a nice position. So I'm exiting from that 15-0. That's from the very last round I did, the very first one. So I'm just going to work my way back through all these 15-0s from the first row of 15-0s and the second row. And I'm sewing from the bottom bead up each time. Make sure that you don't hang your thread around that pin like I just did. Let's get it off the pin. And then just work your way all the way around your 15-0 silver beads in the center. Pull that nice bezel part nice and tight. Just make sure you don't get hung up on your pin. It takes a little doing, but it's not impossible. So I'm going to go ahead and reinforce this entire row by passing through all my 15-0s. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you guys how we're going to add those little connection beads on either side of the hole here on our coin bead. So I've worked my way back around, and I know how I've completed the entire circle because I've went all the way past the head of my pin again. And I went an extra set of the two little 15-0s just to make sure. So I was exiting from this the top bead here from the very last round. Now I'm going to step down into that next 15-0 right there. I'm also going to go through that black delica bead. So I'm coming through that 15-0 and that black delica. I'm going to pull it through, making sure I don't get hung up on my pin. Like that. And now, I'm coming out of that black delica right here. I can use these gray beads in the middle. So I'm going to come through 2 beads on the diagonal. And actually, I just want to go through 2 if I can. So I'm going to come through the next frosted gray, and then the frosted gray of row 2, and I'll show you that. So everywhere where I have 2 gray beads sitting beside each other, I know this one here is like row 3 or row 1, and then the one in the middle, where I'm exiting now, that sits by itself in between 2 black delicas, that's my row 2 bead. So now I can zigzag back and work my way down to where my pin's poking out. So I'm exiting that gray bead. I'm going to go on the diagonal through the outer row and the middle row. Just keep doing that same step using a diagonal stitch. Using those frosted gray beads. Till I get to where my pin's poking out. So now I'm coming out of that bead on row 2. I just need to go through 2 more beads. I'm going through this outer bead and that row 2 bead. And I should be in perfect position. Because now my working thread is exiting right where the pin is poking out, right there. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to make sure that I don't lose this hole. As I pull this pin out, I want to sew into that hole. So I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to sew straight down through the hole of my coin bead. Pull the thread all the way through. And now we're ready to add those 2 little connection beads. And if you need to do any straightening to the and shaping to your bezel, do it now, because once we add these last 2 beads, we will have set this coin bead into a pretty much a stable position and it won't move around. I'm going to pick up these 2 I'll tell you the name of them. They are Duracoat Galvanized Dark Coral Size 10-0 Delicas. I got 2 on my needle. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to poke it right back through that center hole again. But when I come out on the other side, I'm going to make sure that I'm coming out between the gray frosted seed beads, just like that. And not off kilter. So when you pull them into position, they kind of stand on kitty corner like you would think about when you're doing herringbone stitch. I'm going to pick up the other two, and I'm going to come right back down through that hole again and position the 2 beads on this side. And don't worry about if you don't come back up through your delicate bead. Just come back through your center hole for now. And then position those 2 beads. Just like that. So this is what it should look like. So now I want to go up through one of my delicas. I'm going to choose the one on the left. And then I'm going to go down through the delica on the right. And I'm not going to worry about going back through the center just yet. I'm just going to come down through the delica on the right. Don't pull your beads too hard or they'll fly all the way out of position. Then I'm going to come back through my center hole like that. Position my beads just a little bit. And we can pass up and down through these beads too, but we really don't need to. Now that we're coming out right here out of our center hole, we're going to go through that frosted gray bead right in front of where our thread is exiting. Pull your thread through. And then sew into the next gray bead, which should be sitting by itself there on row 2 of our frosted gray beads. Don't let your thread get hung up on your little delicas. And then you're just going to stitch yourself around like that. And then you can either weave off your thread, or you can sew all the way back around to where your tail thread is and tie a knot. So I'm just going to stitch myself on the diagonal all the way around this beadwork, just like we did to get to where our pin was. Sewing through diagonally until I reach my tail thread. And then I'll show you guys how to end the thread. So now I'm setting myself around to where my tail thread and working thread are coming out right beside each other. So I'm just going to tie 2 overhand knots right there. And I'm going to take my needle. Or is it that? So just push through some of your gray ones. And then I'm going to end my 2 threads off. Just use a pair of scissors and cut the threads. Alright guys, so that is it for now. I just wanted to come back and show you everything all laid out here at one time. The complete instructions for these components are in a 3-part video series here on YouTube. If you prefer and you're pretty, experienced at doing brick stitch on a frame, you can probably head over and check out the 3 blog posts. There's 3 corresponding blog posts on the AlluringBeadBoutique.com. And I will put a link to the part 1 of the video and the blog post in this video. These components are just brick stitch around a beautiful dark gray Swarovski pearl using similar colors of our pattern here that we're going along with. I will have this blog post ready for you guys. It's very simple. I also have a brick stitch around a bead video here on YouTube. Try to find a link for that for you guys as well. These are the ones that we just now made. I will be having, I'm going to just do a quick little technique guide for Peyote bezel and throw it up on the shop page. And then this is a pattern. And unfortunately, if you do want to make this entire necklace as is, you will need to purchase the pattern. Or you can make a pendant of your very own to throw in at the very end. But all of the materials and everything like that are listed in this pattern and then also on my blog site for these. All right, guys, that is it. I want to thank you guys for continuing to support me at the AlluringBeadBoutique.com. I'm now on Patreon. If you want to head over there and help support me to keep doing these free tutorials, that would be fantastic. Make sure you are following my blog. Follow me on my social media. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. All right, guys, have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.